All right, well, it's 3:15, so we're going to get started here. Thanks, everybody, for joining us this afternoon. I know it's the last panel on the last day, so I appreciate you sticking around. I promise you it'll be well worth your time. My name's Andy Howard, and I'm the Managing Director for Howard & Associates, which is a consulting firm that helps organizations deploy video communications, whether it's video conferencing or video streaming. I also work with some of the vendors to help them with strategy and marketing, and I'm an advisor to some startups as well. One's a very unique company called Array Telepresence, which will be debuting at InfoComm, so if anybody's interested in video conferencing, I'd encourage you to check that out. So on our panel here today, we have, let them introduce themselves, Ali Denali with T-Mobile, Brian Wells with NASA, and Pete Lurie with Polycom. So Ali, why don't you give a quick introduction of yourself?
Thank you. My name is Ali Denali, and I work at T-Mobile in Washington State, Seattle, and I'm part of the corporate communications group there and work with a lot of digital communications, specifically our digital signage, our intranet, a lot of streaming media, all the streaming media that goes out to employees, and mobile apps that we develop for employees.
So I'm Brian Walls. I'm with NASA, and I am with the NASA Imagery Experts Program, which is a group within NASA. We coordinate the digital video across the whole agency, and also specifically manage the infrastructure for our NASA TV, which is, we have 3 channels of broadcast video that also goes out as streaming. I'll talk a little more about that, but I was brought on to head up the streaming part of it, so I'm the Deputy Program Manager and head of our web video working group at NASA.
Great, and I'm Peter Lurie from Polycom. I'm a global UC architect / consulting engineer, really focusing, on customers, large enterprises, medium-sized enterprises, making sure that they can collaborate better. So that includes, video conferencing that's traditional, streaming, recording, playback, and a lot of adoption services, making sure that once you deploy things, they actually get used. Because if it's sitting there being unused, that's a lose-lose for everybody. So thanks, Andy.
Very good. All right, so we've got kind of a great panel here because we've got a couple of different end users with different use cases, and then a vendor that gets to see a lot of different use cases as well. But so some of the topics that we'll be touching on as we go through it is, what are some of the trends around mobile video? Obviously, it's big and it's getting bigger. The growth on the internet is typically outpaces what you see in the enterprise, but enterprise is really starting to pick up. Almost everybody that I talk to now has mobile at the very top of their mind and is driving a lot of changes in customer requirements, specifically when you have to stream to iPads and smartphones. We'll talk about some different applications. Like I said, we've got some great use cases, and Pete's got a great perspective of what some people are doing. Not the typical corporate communications type applications, but some new things to integrate video into the line of business apps. And then we'll talk about some of the deployment challenges, all the different devices that you have to support, and specifically that's very difficult with the live streaming, the different transport mechanisms, the networking issues that you have to consider, as well as file management. So when you do HTTP streaming, it tends to create a lot more files that you then have to manage. And also, apps versus browser, how do I actually deliver the video to my end users? So just one more quick slide here. This is, when you're streaming video to somebody on the internet, it's pretty straightforward. They're either going to be accessing that stream from their from a Wi-Fi network at their house or over the 3G, 4G network. In the enterprise, it's very important to consider how you're going to deliver that video to people, because if you're going to deliver it over the internal Wi-Fi network, you have to make sure that Wi-Fi network is capable of handling that additional traffic. A lot of Wi-Fi networks that were deployed, so that you could take your laptop into the conference room and check your email. It's a very different scenario when you're streaming video over that network. And also, more devices connecting to the network adds a lot more load to the network. So you got to be, that's one thing I just wanted to point out is you need to be very cognizant of that when you're deploying this in an enterprise. So I'm going to jump right into T-Mobile. So Ali, I'll let you describe what you've been doing with Vine and mobile video.
Great, thank you. End of last year, our group is in charge of the holiday message. Sounds kind of small, but really important message from our executives. And from our perspective, we've adopted this Un-carrier attitude of doing things differently, and it's on us within our internal comms group to be able to also build campaigns that kind of push the edge and bring a different kind of feel to our employees and get them engaged in the conversation. So different than what we've done in the past, where we've had an image or a letter written or an email sent. We decided to do a little bit different thing and to use Vine, short form video with our executives, and then solicit our employees to submit Vines. And that brought some challenges that actually I went to the West Coast edition, the Streaming Media West Coast, and watched Joe give a talk about Vine and Instagram, and I kind of used that information to pitch this idea of using Vine inside for this messaging. So we kind of took those best practices, and started looking at, do we get somebody to professionally do it for us? $5,000-$10,000 for a day, 2 days of produced videos, or do we just kind of go with it and make it a raw Vine video? And then how do we communicate that to employees so that they get engaged and actually produce those Vines to kind of respond back? Well, even though we had this idea fairly with enough time, the biggest challenge was getting our executives to really adopt it, and then but once they've did it, it's just the amount of time that it's required to really communicate that to employees, and then really teach them how to get that kind of information back to you. So even using Vine and teaching them about Vine, it can be a challenge. Now, I have the final video of the 12 executives, and I'm going to talk about some of the results from that. Because what became really important was not only did we engage with our employees, but we also engaged, because Vine is public, we engage on a social with our the Twitter sphere and the Vine sphere. So these are the short videos. There's some sound, but we had all our executives do little, very short videos, and the sound. It's really, we tried our best with the different kinds of props we had. Some were kind of creative, and I guess it's not coming through in terms of the sound. And Vine gives you the opportunity to be a little bit fun with it, a little bit, Un-carrier, as we were trying to instill in this, and show that, hey, your executives are, human beings that are, willing to do something kind of out of the norm. And the results that came out of it, if we go to the slide with the results,
Yeah, sure.
that was the end. So if you notice here, this is from Vine. We had, this was John's tweet, John's Vine that was eventually tweeted. We had over 6,000 Twitter reach from it, over 500 Facebooks. We had a lot of comments. So we generated a lot of social reach on with just from Vine. And then the next slide. From John's Twitter account, his own specific tweet generated almost 5,800 retweets and favorites. Obviously, he's got over 100,000 followers, but it got some social reach, and a lot of people were very positive about this. And then what happened that really made a big difference was the press actually wrote about it, and it then connected we were hoping the connection between us being an Un-carrier, us doing things even internally differently with video. That message came across, and it showed in the results.
So did you actually have to go and shoot their
Yeah.
lines with them? Or,
Yeah,
you didn't script them out. They just
we did.
trying to figure something funny.
We
You got
brought a
6
bunch
seconds
of.
and that's it.
We brought a lot of props and kind of gave him an option for that creative part of it, especially for John's. Gave him, his schedule is very limited.
Right.
Showed up. We even had scripted it with somebody else doing the Santa and the dropping of the coals, but he's like, no, I just want one shot.
Right.
And with one shot, we got it. And with Vine, I don't know if you got to press it down for the amount of times for each specific take, and it creates it. And thankfully, we got it in one shot. And but we took our iPhones and had the Vine account, and we posted it, and right from the phone. Yeah.
Right. And then did you distribute it on YouTube and
it went to Vine, so that streaming of the short form video, and then we posted the collection of videos that you saw back into our intranet, streamed it to all of our employees so they couldn't see it. But the big part was to get our employees to do that, and it wasn't as good of a success of having employees actually do it, and partially it was because of the timing. We actually got it out. By the time we got approval, got everything done, it just wasn't enough time. And that was one of the things I wanted to really make kind of note of, that is give your employees time to really adopt it, use it, maybe even test it, and the expectation to kind of turn it around within a couple of weeks, it's just not going to produce what you want. Yeah.
Very good. All right, Brian.
So I'm going to start out talking a little bit about our NASA TV distribution architecture, which is what I'm closest to. NASA's been doing video a long time, of course, been doing TV content a long time, and back in the shuttle era, we started NASA TV, which was initially a single channel that went to satellite. And as the shuttle went away and we transitioned to digital broadcasting, we moved to 3 channels. One's a public channel, one is education content, and one is specifically for the media. So we've had that pathway for quite a while and have been using it. So as we transitioned over to streaming that content, we are currently going to Ustream and to Limelight as CDNs. And being here last couple of days, it was gratifying to hear. I went to the workshops on Monday, and we're pretty much in line with what they were saying that you ought to be doing at this point. As far as, for delivery, We are doing RTMP to our CDN, which is pretty typical. And then from the CDN, we're using HLS. And for our embedded player, we're using JW Player, which is using HLS, and it can use HLS and Flash, so it plays on computers in the browser, pretty much anybody that has Flash. As well, it goes directly to iOS. And Ustream is able to play, and the HLS plays fairly well on Android. So that's how we're doing the delivery there. Besides those 3 channels, we also have 2 channels that go directly out, the space station view and a high definition HD view from space station. Those goes directly to Ustream, and I'm going to show a clip after.
Can we show right now?
Let's hold off on
Okay.
that. We'll do it afterwards, but I'll show you a little bit of that. That's a new release. Then we also support, of course, streaming events. If it's a big event, we will go to NASA TV, in which case we've already got the persistent streams in place. But we also do a lot of educational events. For instance, we have a moon buggy race from Huntsville, Alabama, which they just renamed, but it's events where students get together, and we'll have a full day's coverage, and that will go out. Often we'll put parts of that on the education channel and then put all of it out on Ustream as a way to reaching out.
When you say channels, is that streaming over your corporate network, or
Well, so there I'm
is it
talking
going
about our
actually
3
to a
NASA TV channels.
To a TV station, or like?
The way
how
that
does it
we
get to the
actually
public?
do it is our NASA network. We have a wide area network, and we have a network that's dedicated to our NASA TV production.
Okay.
That enables multicast across the whole network. So all of our studios are hooked into that,
Right.
as well as Encompass, which is where we do the uplink to the satellite. And we are currently in the process of moving all the playout services to that place as well. So when we're doing a live event from anywhere, they can do a broadcast quality multicast, and that can go directly into the satellite multiplexer.
Okay.
Currently, we then just pick that back up from the satellite and encode it with our encoders, but we're about to move those to the endpoint as well. Let's go to the internal.
And then the Ustream and the Limelight streams, are those 24/7, or is the
Right. Those 3 are all all 5 of these are persistent streams, so they're running all the time, which was a bit unusual for Ustream when we first did it. They weren't really used to
Well,
that.
I can't imagine they're too thrilled with having all that bandwidth going through their system.
They have actually been very gracious and
Yeah.
have liked having our content there.
Okay.
So.
Good content's hard to find.
And it is free content. So,
Right.
so internally, I'm very comfortable with our infrastructure for outreach. We're talking enterprise here, so that's really usually more talking about inReach, right, to your own people. Internally, we've also traditionally had a broadcast video set up. So within an individual center, we typically have a cable system, and several of the centers have moved to an IPTV, either instead, mostly in addition to their cables. So for cable, you've got TVs in a conference room. For the IPTV, it goes to the desktop. We have less good coverage on mobile. We can do the same things for our mobile users that we do for public mobile users, more or less, but we don't really have the privacy. The government's very specific on, if this isn't meant to go to the public, then it has to be encrypted with government level encryption, which isn't the same as what you're going to go out and buy wherever. So that makes that a bit tougher for events, events that we don't care if the public sees, we can do that. But I would say our mobile support is spotty to date. So the way we've done it at the center that I'm at, Marshall Space Flight Center, which was the job that I was doing before I moved to where I am now, we have an IPTV system that goes to the desktop using multicast. Well, our wireless doesn't support multicast, so what we've done is we've taken a Wowza server, we take the same streams or lower encodes, lower rate encodes, push those out to the Wowza server, and we've copied our interface. So if you're on Wi-Fi, you can see the same channels. And that has worked pretty well as a way to get to our mobile users, and that is behind our firewalls, so people can get in by VPN and see that.
So do you have the same challenges with encryption of like the multicast video, or?
Well, then you have an encrypted. We don't have the same requirements if we're just on our own
If you're
private
on
network.
okay.
So once we've got security getting in to our VPN, and then once you're inside, it's okay if we have the video open. And quite a bit of our content is just, we have some commercial content as well as our own content.
Right.
Couple of issues. I have cost. That's not really so much for our internal stuff. I mean, it's the same cost everybody has. That's nothing unique to us. For our out-facing stuff, it's a little bit unique because the better we do it, the more it costs us, which isn't your situation if you're a network. You know,
Right.
that's kind of backwards. But one of our big issues is accessibility, because as the government, since actually the 70s, we've been required that any multimedia output we do is supposed to be fully accessible, which at least means that it has to be captioned. It's supposed to have audio description as well, which we haven't grappled with well. For mobile device, captioning is still really hard. We're getting close. Our Ustream content, we can do traditional broadcast, put in the 608, 708 caption track, and it will go all the way through. We've had a little bit of trouble getting that to work out to our own players,
Okay.
but we think we're close to getting that. So a couple of years ago, it was just like there's no way to do it with live content.
Yeah.
On demand's pretty easy at this point.
You just send it off to a third party to get it captioned or for on demand?
Typically,
Or-
yeah, use either third parties for on demand and also third party for live.
Right. Okay.
Let's go to the HDev, one of those. So this is something that just came, it was shipped up in SpaceX to the International Space Station. Not sure how much y'all are familiar. If you hadn't been following NASA, you may not know too much, but the International Space Station is in orbit at about 200 miles. It normally has 6 people on there all the time. Currently they're down to 3 because they're changing crew. SpaceX is still up there, but they brought up a package of cameras that have been attached to the outside of the space station. And this is some sample video that's just for the life of this experiment. There are 4 cameras that they flew, and the experiment is just looking at fairly inexpensive commercial style cameras. They're put in a box and mounted on the outside, and they're facing the Earth. So this is a forward-facing one. And if you just scroll forward a little bit through the video.
The cameras are actually on the outside of the...
Yes, they're in a box. So they're in an airtight box, but they are
okay.
outside attached.
Those,
So this is
Pretty
a
cold up there,
downward
right?
view. And if you go a little further forward, you'll see 2 rear views. And yeah, that's a camera that's kind of blown out. And go a little bit further forward, and you'll see the 4th camera. There you go. That's a nicer view. That's something that we're just putting out to Ustream using a little Matrox Monarch, I think it's called, which you can see out. It was in the show floor. And that's going to be going out full time, and we've had, in the 2 weeks since it's been out, there's been, last I looked, it was over 16 million people had looked at it on Ustream. And anytime you go and there's a picture, it's usually in the 40,000. And if it's just darkness, there's usually 10,000. So I assume people are turning it on and leaving it on. I was hoping to show it live here, but ISS is currently somewhere over Africa right now. I checked the flight path, but we could look later when the show's over if anybody wants to take a look.
Great. Do you want to speak to this one? This is just where you would go to get your get your content?
Yeah,
You wanna watch
so the main NASA page is a good place to go for curated content. It keeps what's current and tells you how to get there. YouTube is what we're currently using at NASA for our on-demand. It's our primary place that we're putting our on-demand video. You know, there's some on our site as well, but that's where things mostly go for the longer term, and there's lots of content there. And our group is currently working on a central repository for the best of NASA content all in one place so that it's easier to get to and to find. Right now, your best bet to find something is probably to Google it
Right.
and look over everything that's anywhere, but we're going to have our own site hopefully soon that will do that better and let you get to full contribution quality if you need it, know where to go to ask for it.
Right. Okay, great. All right, Peter.
Sure, you can just jump ahead. So a little different than these guys. I'm much more end user focused. I actually spend time talking to customers. You can just go up to one more slide. What I hear from end users is, hey, I want to sit down and create content anywhere using any device at any time. Now, just make it happen, easy. The problem is the next thing they say is they have to be authorized and has to be secure and has to be auditable and has to work on my network and on the internet and be scalable and supportable and easy and free. Okay, so it sounds like from the laughter that you guys have the exact same requirements. Just go one more. But this is the reality that the vendors are having to help design and provide solutions for today. It obviously resonates, which is good because it means the customers I'm dealing with tend to be typical customers. But these are legitimate requirements. I just want to go one more slide. To me, when we start talking about the enterprise, we're trying to provide mobile video in the enterprise. To me, mobile video is any place that I don't have a LAN card connected. If you're in my office, that's you're on an iPad, that's mobile. If you're on a laptop in a conference room, that's mobile. If there's no LAN cord, it's mobile. The idea is that this is good. This is good, and you get how many million hits? On the ISS, was it?
Yeah, we're about 16 now.
16 million hits. That's good. If you just think about it, yeah, it cost I guess us all money having to do it. But if people are using this technology, that means there's value in it. That means people can, it's being adopted. Just want to go one more slide. When we sit down and talk to salespeople, they're saying, hey, I'm going to use Salesforce.com as my tool or Chatter or whatever, and I need to be able to do this, to use it inside Starbucks. And if I need to play a training video inside Starbucks, it's got to work. Now, the corporate communications people say, okay, you can watch that video, but I still need to make sure that you're somehow authorized to view it. I don't want you necessarily viewing stuff that you're not authorized to do. And that it's going to have to work reliably every time. I'm going to go one more slide. If you are up building a tower for T-Mobile and you need to pull up the documentation on how to install this tower and play the video on how to calibrate the whatever it is up on top there, that is your enterprise. You have to support that, whether it's 3G or 4G or Wi-Fi. I don't know what they've got up there, but coming down is going to take 15, 20 minutes, and going back up is going to take equally long time. This is productivity. This is really what makes, the power of these technologies is making you more effective in your job. So if you want to go ahead, just one more slide. I always talk about coming up with deployment decisions that support the users. Hey, I've got corporate headquarters. I'm going to put my stuff there. If my viewers are like NASA, some of them are going to be in the centers by the middle green arrow, but most of them are on the public internet. It doesn't make sense to host my video in that core of that corporate network. Hey, let's use let's use some intelligence on who's going to be actively viewing that content and make these decisions. Security roles play a huge effect in this. We have customers who say, we're a pharma customer, we're a pharma company. We don't want anything else. I don't care how big of a WAN pipe we need. We're not hosting anything. And other customers say, you know what, YouTube's great, it's free. So there is some medium. You have to understand what's right for your organization. What are your business drivers? I'll go one more slide. This is an example that's fairly real. It's a little hard to see. I have a customer who's got the media, which is the red circle, off the public internet, and they have to they have to go 3 hops, through 2 different sites to finally where the bulk of their users are. And one of their WAN links is literally a 2 meg link between San Francisco and I think it's Miami. The problem is they've got a gig link between their New York City and their routing set wrong, so that all this video traffic, instead of going through is taking the shortest path instead of the best path. So understanding your network is really key when you start doing these deployments. People say, yeah, it doesn't matter. It's just a network it'll take care of it. But if you're buffering and having poor quality, it's bad. And you really need to be able to optimize and understand where you are. I'm not saying you have to deploy multicast. If you can, great. If you can't, that's reality, especially if you have an enterprise that's grown like any of the enterprises I've ever seen. Organic, boom, up, need another route, up, built a building. There's not central planning. I'm happy if there's documentation. That's always the first start. I'm going to just go ahead one more slide. But really, adoption. I would love to have videos with 16 million hits. Okay, internal videos. I'd love to have videos with 160,000 hits. But the way to get this adoption is really by sitting down and coming up with solutions that are easy to use. One of the things that Andy talked about or mentioned, app versus browser. God, I want to use a browser. I'm a big browser guy. Why? Because it's easy. I don't have to worry about apps being out of date, whether it's on a PC or a Mac or an iPad or whatever. It's just going to work. If it's easy and just works, that really helps adoption. The other thing is, pick partners intelligently. I was talking to a customer yesterday who, bought the Polycom gear and went and installed it and was using it and called for support. And they had gone with the lowest bid, and the reseller, the VAR supposedly, didn't have a clue about what they were doing. So there is value in some of the services here to understand this market, whether it's Polycom or somebody else. Make sure that you have implementation services or deployment services or whatever you want to call it, adoption services, because if it's the first time you're doing it, that's fine. But the vendors who have skilled people, are just going to make you more successful. I should go ahead one more. And that's it for me. But please, I'm sure we'll all take questions. So.
Well, I think that the point that you make about the network and the fact that anything that doesn't plug into a hardwire network is really mobile is really the very key point. Kind of going back to what I was stating at the beginning is that you really need the 2 big keys are your WAN links, where there could be traffic bottlenecks, and your wireless network, because the wireless networks of 5 years ago were not built to support video. And multicast can certainly help, but when you're accessing it from an iPad, multicast doesn't really help. It's all HTTP streaming, so it's by definition unicast. So you really need to as you continue to roll out more and more mobile applications, you really need to understand what that's going to do to your network. So we've got about 10 minutes left. I have a few questions, but I would want to take some from the crowd if there was anybody who wanted to ask any questions.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of how to frame this, but basically it has to do with and this might be for a T-Mobile person, but essentially in the project that you did with Vine and what you're doing in regards to marketing and PR training, you're basically using public internet as backhaul. What do you, and I've been thinking more about this because I work for a university and our clients and customers are students. We got
So the question is, how about using the public internet for backhaul?
In our case, for this one campaign, it became a necessity because we were asking employees to submit video, and that video through our firewall is just not going to happen in the way that we wanted it to. So we relied on a public infrastructure, Vine, to be able to be the middleware of being able to get us, people, getting us that kind of user-generated content, and for us to also to show the world what it means to be, part of T-Mobile. So it is a case-by-case basis. Now, we use our CDN and we use Brightcove to stream all of our internal content, and we're going to be, and it's all IP restricted. It's secure.
Do you host that all at Brightcove, or do
It's hosted at Brightcove, and it goes internally. So for our internal video, so those have specific requirements, and we're still going to have those kinds of needs. We are putting our toe in a little. I mean, there's obviously the marketing side that utilize in our social media side that capitalizes on YouTube and Vine and Twitter to connect with customers, and but for internal, it's becoming those avenues are kind of opening up, and using them in a very engaging way can be a win-win situation for everyone that's involved.
Does T-Mobile have an app for employees? Do you have like an internal app?
We're working on it.
So can I just chime in
Yeah,
as
go
well?
ahead.
So I'm all for using the public internet for doing backhaul where it's appropriate. You have external students, that's perfect. As long as you can understand that you can't obviously guarantee the quality of experience for those users because they're at best effort of the internet. May it make sense to put a streaming server physically on your campus? That becomes a network architecture discussion. Probably. Yeah, the answer is probably. But definitely do it just to make sure that if you have, as an educational organization, your value is in your content, and you want to make sure that content is protected. If you want to build an app, please, by all means, what I'm seeing going on from some thought leaders is much more movement towards HTML5, and you can do a lot, in a browser that's HTML5 capable. Very many things that are very similar to what you can do in an app. And to me, the ability to automatically have that updated when you hit that page instead of having to download and install an app, far outweighs the benefit of having some extra metrics on or whatever that app's going to get you. Q&A can probably be a little more effective in an app than in a browser, but I'd rather trade the lack of support calls for a little more CPU resources. That's an architectural discussion that could be had in depth.
Well, I think it goes back to what Peter was saying before, and on the diagram that he had. It depends a lot on how your network is set up. So a lot of corporate networks all feed through one or two locations to go out to the internet, and that's a security thing. So in that case, you can't really use the internet for backhaul because you're just going to end up going back out to pull it back in.
Yeah, I definitely would agree. It's not the only solution you would have, but it seems to be something that's being utilized more and more in creative ways.
Yeah, well, and I think it depends on the application too. So like I'm working on a project for a window company, and they want their customers to be able to show them their windows by using video so that they can measure it, and they can have more touch with those customers, because that's a difficult sell, especially if you're not in front of the customer, and it's easier to do it over video than to have somebody have to physically go to their house. So that, by its nature, is internet. It's going to be going over the internet because that's really the only way you can do it. So it really depends on the application too, I think. But I think there's going to be, a lot more video video for corporate communications is very popular. It's needed, it's very beneficial, but I think organizations are now taking it to the next level where they're saying, I need to use video to get in front of my customers, to interact with my customers, to do things the way we haven't done it before. And I think there's a lot of good opportunities there. Any other questions, Joe? All right, so I was going to ask one, how much, what percentage of, with NASA, do you track which devices are accessing the content, and do you have any metrics on, how much is actually coming from mobile devices versus, typical PCs and Macs?
I don't know the answer to that offhand.
Mm-hmm.
I know we have
well,
we have Google Analytics, but
Yeah.
I don't know what they are off the top of my head.
Yours was all
It's-
mobile thing,
well,
right?
we have a lot of laptops, but in terms of platform, for our internal employees, it's overwhelmingly Android right now,
Okay.
and that's because of just how we've just had Android more for a longer term for our employees as an option to use.
Right.
So, but iOS is catching up. But we do take analytics fairly seriously and use it to make decisions on how we deploy
Yeah.
our next solution. But we have a philosophy of mobile first. So even if we look at building a responsive design or an app versus web-based, it has to work perfectly on mobile versus on a desktop, and that's just the kind of the shift of our uncarrier mentalities. We got to make sure that we are using our own technologies, using our own devices, and making sure our own employees are our greatest ambassador for our technology.
Are you seeing your customers taking a mobile-first approach to
I
things?
mean, our mantra is mobile first, cloud always.
Right.
So whatever we do has to work at the same time it's delivered on a PC. It has to be delivered on a mobile platform, because I know internally when we do our training, we are delivering internal training, by recorded video, and then we will go in and have live Q&A sessions. So it's the flipping the classroom model that I talked about in Khan Academy, where you go in, you get the information, then you have discussion. And so we are very definitely seeing, a decent percentage mobile, 25 to 30% on mobile devices.
Okay.
Yeah, and beyond just mobile tablets,
Yeah.
that category is
Yeah.
huge growth that we see in our enterprise, not only with internally but also our customers.
Mm-hmm.
So being able to make sure that our apps and our videos are playing not only on the phone but that tablet just as nicely is important.
Sure. Okay, well, we've got a couple more minutes. Do you want to just say some final thoughts? Any closing statements you'd like to share with us?
I'm on Twitter. Twitter is the Dev Guy, TheDevGuy. So follow and connect with me. I won't be able to stay. I have to head out back to Seattle, sunny Seattle.
He did a red eye in this morning and then back on a plane this afternoon.
Yeah.
Great effort. Brian?
Well, so I would say that in the streaming world, what I've really been glad to see over the last couple of years is a lot of things have shaken out. And there are some pretty good ways to do things that will reach a lot of people. And like the one we're doing now, where you're really going HLS to most devices, is working pretty well. And if you have RTSP failover for the older Androids, that gives you something you can stream out almost everywhere if you do the work on the front end. And that's a nice change, because 2 or 3 years ago we were talking, well, is it H.264? Are you going to go at WebM? Are you going to go this or that? And there was so much. So there's a lot of things to look forward to, and we've got all the H265 and all that fun stuff coming up, which will eventually make a difference. But right now, there's some pretty straightforward ways to do things that give you a big audience, and that's a pleasant change.
Yeah, and I'd actually like to echo, Brian saying, hey, focus on the users. Figure out what devices they're using, what they support, the best, most effective way to get the content to who your market is, who your internal customer is. And there is value in being able to share this information, whatever it is. This is the knowledge in your organization. The more you get out, the more effective you're going to be. And I just want to say thanks.
Great. All right, so, and my closing remarks are, this is the kind of stuff I do all the time. So if you are thinking about doing a, mobile initiative, my contact information, and I'd be happy to help. So thanks everybody for coming. Hope you enjoyed the show, and safe travels if you're going back home. Thank you.